Hello and welcome to the Happy PharmD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Barker, founder and coach at the Happy PharmD. In this episode, we're joined by Jena Quinn, founder of Perfecting Peds. We talk about her journey of how she went from pharmacist, starting up her own side business, and eventually launching Perfecting Peds. And I think what my hope is that you learn from this conversation today is that experimenting, learning, and growing is the best way to move forward with a career and to move away from overthinking, hoping for a perfect resume, hoping for a perfect outreach, a perfect message. Perfection is the enemy of good. And in this episode, I think you'll learn great wisdom and insight and action steps for your career, no matter where you're at in your journey. So let's get into it. And you started Perfecting Peds when?
Do you want to know the timeline?
Yeah.
Okay, so we did fertility treatments for our first two.
Okay.
We were like, my husband's best friend got married in Costa Rica, and we're like celebrating being done with children. So we call her our Costa Rican surprise.
Beautiful.
So I bought my LLC, and 6 days later found out I was pregnant. I decided, like, F it. This is meant to be. I'm going to still do it. I like grinded it out as far as like as a side hustle for almost a full year. Got contracts lined up and executed 3 weeks before my due date and delivery. Got 400 patients dropped to me 3 weeks after the birth of my third child, and just ran with it.
You know, I'm going to retroactively say all of this should be the starting conversation for the podcast. So, unless you're not willing to share that.
Oh, I don't give. Yeah, I'm an open book. Yeah, okay. There's nothing you can ask that's like TMI.
That's incredible.
I was like, screw it. No, because this is my thing. No time's a good time, right? You always have an excuse. It's like, oh, my kid's sick, or I'm too stressed out with X, Y, and Z. There's just with life, there's never a good time for anything, ever.
Well, yeah, nothing. Yes. And everyone can come up with a reason as to why to not do something, right?
100%.
I need to catch up on my Netflix backlog. I'm too stressed out right now with my kids, or my kids are in soccer, or they're doing this, or we're doing remodeling right now.
Yeah, there's always something, even if it's so stupid. And so like, that's always just been my mindset. And in some ways, I think doing this while they're younger, when they have less activities, is like, and they fall asleep at like a normal hour, right? So I work like a lot of like 9 to 12 at night. I built this business while breastfeeding. So, you're up anyway, so you might as well like have productive time instead of like just scrolling and making dumb purchases. So
I wholeheartedly agree with the sentiment of like, there's never a perfect time, but it's actually perfect that the very thing that could have stopped you from doing this was children, knowing that your business is about children.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, it just felt like there's no, and then like, I've shared this with a lot of people, but like, my kids, knock on wood, aren't medically complex. You could argue my 7-year-old is, because she has asthma, allergies, and then recently had diagnosed with an essential tremor. So with that being said, you could say, which, knock on wood, has gotten a lot better. But good. You could argue that, with these 3 kids that are quote unquote, I mean, they're nothing compared to the kids. Like the mom I just talked to, trach, vet, G2 dependent, navigating 10 meds, navigating 4 subspecialists, plus. That's actually
Yeah.
I'm lowballing her. But the average is like 12 to 13 for these medically complex kids, physicians and subspecialists. And so, like, it's nothing compared to what these parents are going through, yet I always see in my own children medication errors. So if I'm constantly correcting my own kids' meds, can you imagine if you 10x that, what is really happening? And so that's what keeps me going every day. It's just like the average patient we sit down with, we have 13 interventions. And so that's 13 different opportunities to optimize meds that if we weren't present and doing this, because it's not the standard of care, MTM or CMM pediatrics, it wouldn't be done without us. So that's obviously what keeps me going every day. And I thought, just like you said, it kind of fueled my fire that like I have to care, navigate, care coordinate, and manage my 3 healthy children, and it's super hard. Can you imagine if you're a medically complex parent? To me,
Yeah.
it seems like you have all bets against you, honestly.
Well, it's easy to find excuses. That is
Yes.
true. Were you a pharmacist getting into this profession thinking that one day you'd do this, that you would get into entrepreneurship?
Oh, hell no. No. So my grandfather, he's like my absolute mentor. He was a pharmacist, a chemist. He worked at GlaxoSmithKline. I always brag for him. Unfortunately, he passed away, ironically, 3 years ago, which is what propelled me into this whole thing. But he has 175 patents, 125 publications. His name's Carl Kaiser.
Whoa.
What, just a little bit German with that last name, but he was brilliant. And so I always like I tell all my cousins, like, I'm the favorite, obviously, because I'm the next generation of pharmacists, and none of them are pharmacists. So that's our family joke. But that being said, like, I always felt like I had to live up to a lot, and I was like, he really like sparked like, okay, I'm seeing this issue, I'm seeing this problem, I should do more. I know I think I shared with you that I also 3 years before I was hell-bent on, before I bought my LLC, just getting out of the hospital full-time and doing it more part-time so that I could have flexibility with my children. I started selling skincare, and I realized that I probably like a couple months in, I was top 1% of the company, and they were sending me on trips, and it was this like flexible lifestyle that I was like yearning for a long time. But also I realized like I built a team of like 50 girls. Like I really love being part of the team. And so like seeing that I loved building things, being part of a team, but loved pharmacy way more than I would ever love skincare, I was like, why don't I do all of them? You never know. I'm sure I could ask the same question to you. It's kind of just like baby steps. And then you look back and you're like, wow, this is actually turning into something I didn't even think this was possible. I'm sure you've had those moments too in your life.
Yeah, it wasn't like you. For me, for about 5 years I was trying different things. And for me, I was like trying really hard to reject my identity as a pharmacist. Like I was
Well,
very
yeah.
disappointed by pharmacy as an AmCare pharmacist. And I was trying to like do anything but pharmacy. And funny enough, the things that made me quite a bit of money in that experimentation phase were all pharmacy related activities,
Yeah.
like writing content, publishing content, selling some pharmacy websites, building some websites that were pharmacy related. And it wasn't until I said in the end of 2016, okay, this is who I am. Like I need to accept it and I need to make it into something that actually can help others.
Yeah.
For you, I think it's really interesting that you gave up something probably pretty lucrative that you built. Did you build the skincare thing on the side while working full time?
Yeah, so I built it for like 7 or 8 months, and then it matched my half of my pharmacist salary around then. So then I was like,
That's incredible.
it was fun. It was something like I
Yeah.
realized like everybody kind of cringes at sales. And I come from parents that, my mom's a nurse, my dad's a principal. There's no entrepreneurs in our family, let alone people who are like selling things. So they would always make crack jokes and stuff. And I'm like, you know what? The things that you learn in sales are invaluable. That mindset, like you learn how to connect with people, you learn how to be vulnerable. If you're a good salesman, you're going to be vulnerable. You're going to have to learn to connect with people. You're going to have to work a ton on your mindset. Those are things that aren't taught to us in pharmacy school. And so had I not had that experience, like we would go on massive retreats where they would pay for us for 5 days. And it would just be like, I remember listening to Mel Robbins. I mean, they would have these like amazing speakers that would literally like change your life, just like being in the audience. And so those types of opportunities aren't available in pharmacy, which is like, as I'm building out my team and I think about, okay, what's on our 2024 calendar and pipeline and roadmap. I just think it has to be a retreat, and it has to be a mindset. Like, we're not talking about pharmacy. We're talking about, mental health. We're talking about well-being. We're talking about mindset, because if my pharmacists and staff aren't plugged in and don't feel like they have a work-life balance, then I'm not going to get the productivity I need from them. So again, we have unlimited PTO, which was really like cool to make that decision as like a CEO to be like, no, unlimited PTO. If any family member, if you have a crisis, like we have a system that we can jump in behind each other and help each other with patient care. And so again, none of that stuff came from being a pharmacist, because, my life in hospital was, I started a role, the first pediatric pharmacist patient care role at the hospital. I was doing arguably the job of 5 people. Now there's 5 people, where I was doing 1 FT for years. And I think I learned a lot of things of like, what does burn you out? Well, if you're on call 24/7, taking care of critically ill kids and not feeling like you have a break. So like, kind of not the anti of what we see in the traditional pharmacist role, but I think what it showed me is that like there's so much more important things that you have to make sure you stay on top of with your staff than just where's their clinical knowledge. Like, yes, that's part of it, but that's not where the majority of our time needs to be spent. Absolutely, we need to make sure they're clinically up to snuff, but there's so many layers, and mindset and work-life balance and mental health is so important.
We weren't able to do a retreat last year, but we did one as a team about a year and a half ago now. And I agree with everything that you're saying. In fact, I had one of the coaches tell me that they'd be willing to pay to attend these kinds of retreats. And we focus on vision casting and having people work on what is it that you want to create or build or do. And it was a lot of fun. So
yeah,
good for you. I'm glad you're doing it. Pick somewhere fun, somewhere warm.
I know. That's like one of the positive things. And even like, I've been trying to do again, like fun locations, just like you're saying, and then making sure like, even if it's an hour, our staff's all over the US, but like, are you going to EPHA?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So like, I get to meet some of our staff who I've actually never met in person out there. And then
Oh, fun.
I'm really excited. And then my grandparents, the one that I just talked about, my grandmother's still living. And so I get to go to Maryland, but then 2 of our staff are local in the Baltimore area. So, even if it's just for like an hour or two to catch up in person. But I think, again, there's so much to be said about just the times that you're doing non-pharmacy related stuff too.
Yeah, no kidding. So you rose to the top of the skincare, but you realized the thing that you tried and you did really well at wasn't like a match with maybe your legacy or like something that you were really passionate about.
Yeah.
Did that happen quickly for you? Like that realization of this is not it and I need to do something else, or was it gradual?
It was gradual. So I had this business idea of or not even, I didn't even know if it was I didn't know it was a business idea, to be honest. For over a decade, I was the local pediatric PharmD in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Still to date, I was doing a lot of work for free just because, that's our job, right? We want to help people. We want to make sure that, especially when it comes to kids, it's a whole different level of I don't care if you're paying me or not. So I was for a long time the town pediatric pharmacist, and then with my own kids, I'd identified hey, it's kind of weird. In the hospital, I worked intimately with all the medical residents. And when they would graduate, they would all disperse all over the country after going through our residency. But they would always call me and say hey, Jen, can I run these ideas by you? Can I run this med rec by you? Can I ask you this drug info question? And so it dawned on me a couple of things, that medical residents didn't have once they left the walls of the 4 hospitals, they did not have a pediatric trained PharmD like they did when they were in residency. Yeah. The retail pharmacists, from talking to them over the years, wanted and yearned for that help in peds because they didn't feel comfortable. They don't even have the weight of the child on their scripts. Right. Depending on the university you graduate from, some had pediatric electives, but it wasn't mandated. And still to date, some don't even have electives in pediatrics. And so we're getting a ton of interest to just partner with, at least for APPEs and IPPEs, because that's something that we lack in the US. And then the third thing was from talking to the medical residents over the years, the decade, that they only had 1 semester of pharmacology, and they did not feel comfortable managing anything outside of your general meds. And if they were going to have a prescription of a specialist, they were never going to touch that med, even if they thought maybe it was wrong. And then organically, like I said, I would help the community and be their peds pharmacist. And then over the decade, I would partner with our really complex kiddos that would get admitted to the PICU, but I was always intervening on their chronic meds. And I'm like, who the hell is looking at these meds? Who's doing this? I'm so confused. And so, with that, it just kind of, I had already started having the entrepreneur mindset with the skincare. And I thought where you'd asked me just a year prior, could you do entrepreneurism? Are you a leader? Would you ever see of yourself any sort of social media influence? I would have laughed in your face. But then I'm I think I might be able to do this. And so my focus gradually over the 3 years of being an entrepreneur at Rodan and Fields, I started to identify this need and this opportunity within the pediatric population, within pharmacy, within the US, that I'm it kind of gave me the confidence as I grew my RNF to be okay, you can. And as I started working on the mindset piece of it. And I was I think I can do this. And so it was an organic, natural transition over to this over about 3 years until I bought my LLC.
Wow. And now we kind of have the pleasure of skipping all of the pain and research and hustle that you went through, because now it's launched, it's official. You are celebrating your first major contract. You have staff people. Like, you've gone through
Our
an insane
seventh
amount.
contract, which is
Oh, your
exciting.
seventh?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my bad. Your seventh contract, excuse me. So now you have all of this, and knowing what you know now, I think a lot of pharmacists are inspired by stories like this. And some think I want to do this, but I don't know where to get started.
Yeah.
I think your story is beautiful from the perspective of, and this is what I try to tell people, is you have to let go of perfection, even though I think it's hilarious that you have the word perfect in your business
I'll
name.
tell you how that came about, but it's going to align with what you're saying right now.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. Kids' medicine should be perfect. There are children, but you experimented, and you even went with a route of something that I know a lot some pharmacists get into, skincare sales and selling those kind of products. But like, you didn't stick with it. You realized that it was good, you were successful at it, you had qualities that were helping you be successful at it, but you moved it really quickly to what you have now. And I think this is a really compelling story because pretty much everyone's first idea stinks.
And I'll share with you, like, my first, how I got Perfecting Peds started is not where I am now. So yeah, I can share that as well. Cause it does. Your first idea sucks and you're going to try it and most likely fail. But like, half of it is just like persistence. Keep going.
So what was the first idea for Perfecting Peds?
Yeah. So ironically, to back up, I have debilitating, well, I shouldn't say, before I got diagnosed and treated OCD and anxiety. And as part of that, I've always been a perfectionist. And so there's a story behind the name. My whole life has been, honestly, and being a mom of 3 little girls, 7, 4, and 1, has always been like, let go of the perfectionism. Let it go. Like, it does not serve you to stay up late at night and clean the house. Like, if you're exhausted, go to bed. It doesn't serve you to worry about if they have dirt on their shirt or if that one extra little snack that they're going to eat. Like, it doesn't serve you. It's you're going to drive yourself crazy. And so it's been a journey. And I know you have children as well, of like letting go of the perfectionism and just getting started, right? Ironically, the one part of my personality and OCD that I've been able to like really channel my perfectionism into is pediatric pharmacy, because it's the one part of my life that does have to be perfect. Like, patient care has to be perfect. It's non-negotiable. So hence why I called it Perfecting Peds, because it's the one part of my life where I can let like my OCD and my perfectionism shine. And if you talk to any of our staff who are pediatric pharmacists, because we're so detail oriented and meticulous, I would argue we all have a little bit of that in us. So I felt like it was the perfect name. So I actually started twofold, and both, I was like, it's not where I'm supposed to be. I started taking beta patients and doing cash pay. From there, I was like, okay, I have an hypothesis, like this is needed. Then I went on to, and we still have the contracts, went on to then do medical daycares, long-term cares, and subacute rehabs in New Jersey. Knowing that we can't bill as providers, I was really stuck in New Jersey to be at the mercy of some facility or provider paying us. I despise long-term care. There's no way I could say it nicely. I think the margins are small. The autonomy of a pharmacist is crap. We go in there to like check expirations and write in a note, no irregularities noted, but we've never elevated the profession to where it needs to be clinically for these long-term care pediatric patients, but just geriatric patients too. So like, what we did was we came in, we implemented a CPA. I said, pay me what you're paying with that consultant pharmacist that's not pediatric trained. We'll do a value-based care at the end of the year and see how much money we've saved you, because C-suite cares about money.
Yep.
So they hired us for all 5 facilities.
Wow.
Happy
To be clear, they hired you a value-based training, meaning there was no base pay?
So we had a base pay. It was nominal. Okay. It was nominal. I mean, we were doing easily 3 times the hours that we were getting paid. So this is all bootstrap too. But what I knew was, one, I wasn't going to hound my pharmacists to spend X amount of number hours or minutes in a chart. The standard of care in long-term care is 5 minutes a chart on children that have an average of 23 meds. That's absolute shit. And I was not going to tell my pharmacists to do that. They were spending like an hour to 30 minutes a chart. The other thing is we implemented a CPA, because through collaborative practice agreements, that gave us the autonomy to just go in and change things that we agreed upon on the collaborative practice. And then we would take things back like wean plans and the more detailed like ADR monitoring and stuff to the physicians. Once they approved them, we would implement. This allowed us to have an average of 13 interventions. I knew that I needed a proof of concept in some sort of ambulatory care space where a pediatric pharmacist had never been. And I knew that this is where we should get started. So we took our first 102 patients. Our publication is 2 weeks away via the Journal of Pediatric Pharmacy and Therapeutics. And we were able to really nail down what we knew was our hypothesis. And we knew that there was going to be, phenomenal things when you put a pediatric PharmD in the longitudinal care of a pediatric patient month over month over month over month, just like you would a dietitian, just like you would a PT, just like you would OT. We found that there was a 15% reduction in unnecessary meds. Kids do suffer from polypharmacy. It's not talked about. We reduced hospitalizations by 44%, and we had an annual cost savings in just 102 of our patients of $1.1 million. We took that, and I said, I hate long-term care, and I think the ultimate beneficiary is the insurance companies, and then started pitching to insurance company. So that's our model, and that's what's successful, but that is not where we started. So there's something to be said about what you said is where you start. It's probably not where you're going to land.
A lot of wisdom, I think, to break down. You first started talking about perfectionism and where it's benefiting you. And I've, in the last 3 months, I feel like I've been talking about this a lot with our clients, that perfectionism is good for patient care. But it's really not helpful in terms of career exploration, applying to things that you feel like you're not going to have any chance doing because you're not the perfect candidate. It's not all that helpful in parenting, right?
No.
So it's almost like you have to adopt a philosophy of like trial and error and be willing to experiment or be a scientist, like a mad scientist even, who's willing to try things that may be crazy, because you don't know where it could end you up. Like in you did the path that I think a lot of people start with, is they start working with people one-on-one. And I think it's really interesting that you didn't stick to that, because that's what a lot of...
It's not viable financially to grow a business.
No, it's not. But if you look at a lot of the people in this space of trying to inspire pharmacy entrepreneurship, the consultant route is I haven't done a poll, but it seems like a lot of people are trying to do B2C, business to consumer, versus B2B models.
Yeah. And
yeah, and that's where you started, but that's not where you are now. Congrats.
Thank you. I can't say I did it by myself. So I have a co-partner or co-founder. That's lovely. I have an entire staff that that helps me, inclusive of my husband, who's our cybersecurity guy.
Oh, nice.
It's handy to have him, but definitely couldn't do it without every member of our team. But just
you got a partner.
I did. It's been a year.
That has the potential to be scary.
It was, and still is, to be honest. Like, he came in almost 2 years in, and when I got the results, or I should say analyzed the outcomes of our interventions in long-term care, I knew I needed to go B2B, and I couldn't do it long-term care facility to long-term care facility because it would take knowing the local tribal knowledge, and it would take who knows how many pitches. But this particular individual is a nurse, a ex-trauma nurse of many years, who then turned corporate and has 10-year history of contracting with payers. To say we dated kind of, we had a loose term sheet to make sure, like, the first 6 months, like, this is good. He's also a dad. He has 3 kids, lives out in Michigan, but it was really scary because I felt like I was cutting off my left leg to give to him when I gave over some equity to the company. That being said, I am like, I can't. Have you ever read Rocket Fuel?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a great book.
That's what happened. It was just like,
You're the visionary. He's the operations person.
Yeah. Yes. And so, like, I got to, just like you were talking about, like, I got to live in my creative space while I had somebody who was very, like, operations. Like, I give him an idea and he's like, okay. And he executes on it. And I help, of course, like, I'm attending the meetings but really when it comes down to, like, things that, like, you have to know in insurance land to have a sale, like, he gets it. Or just like operational barriers that I'm like, okay, I have this big idea. He's like, okay, here's what we're going to do to execute on it. And we had talked about before, I don't even know if it was before you hit record, but, like, there's this type of personality as, like, a entrepreneur that you love creating, and that's what kind of fuels you, is you see the problem and you're creating and you're fixing and you're pivoting. But I'm very good at this wide vision, but I sometimes need somebody to bring me back and be like, okay, this is what we're going to focus on right now, and here's how we're going to get it done. And so I can't say, like, he's been, like, since he's been partners with me, we've had 3 contracts with major MCOs and have 10x the company. And so I think there's something to be said that, like, yes, I know a lot of people take pride in being, like, a solopreneur, but I didn't find with my weaknesses and my interests that it was going to be feasible for me to do it just and do it well based off of my vision.
Kudos for you. I do recommend Rocket Fuel for anyone in entrepreneurship. Because what the basic concept that I learned from it was that a lot of people who start up businesses are usually visionaries, people with ideas, but they struggle on the execution side, right? There's so much to do and there's so many details with those things. And usually creative people are not necessarily, like, driven to make sure that all the details of something make sense. I have a COO for the company, Sarah McGregor, and the business would at some point eventually crumble without having that operations person.
1,000%.
Because I'm too busy creating, it's fun.
It is. I get to live in my space that I'm happy and
yeah,
it's fun. And then I don't have to worry, like, the little, like, day to day, don't worry. Like, I'm in there, the trenches with everybody, but it's like a lot of things I do triage to him, and I'm like, I'm going to do what I love. So yeah, I get that. I didn't know you had a COO. That makes sense. So you get to play where you love as well.
I do. We just started up a new kind of meeting where it's almost like a workshop for the two of us. And I know when things are going really well because I interrupt the meeting to say how excited I am that we're doing something. And I
Sounds like
compliment
me.
her. Like, oh, this is so awesome. Thank you so much for starting this and continuing this with me.
We meet
Yeah, it's
every Monday, Wednesday, Friday for at least 30 minutes to an hour. And that has been like where the sauce is. Cause you have to learn. Another thing I learned about myself is that I'm a really crappy communicator. Like I'll just give somebody a task and expect them like, oh no, do it. Like, and then I expect them to do it just like I would. And then I get frustrated when they don't. And so
yeah.
I've learned how to like schedule cadence meetings with our staff and people involved so that I'm a work in progress for that in that regard.
I think it's true for most visionaries. We ask people to do something once and they'll just do it. That's the assumption anyway, right? And you don't need to follow up with them. You don't need to help them improve their ability. It's just they'll do it. Unfortunately, it's hardly the case, right?
No.
For each section of our business, we have team meetings about every week, and it's meant to just be focused on those metrics, improving things, making things better. So I don't want to do those meetings, or I didn't want to, but now that I see the magic happening in them and seeing people improve, like it's wonderful to have those things.
It is.
What originally even brought you into my world was a really lovely post that you made. Do you remember this? And how I reached out to you? We'll put it in the show notes because I think it was so compelling. So I hadn't heard of you or met you before this, but you made this LinkedIn post that I thought was such a great commentary of how I have been feeling about pharmacy and LinkedIn in particular. And I wish I pulled it up before this interview, but the message that I got from it was, lots of people right now are specialists in certain areas, and it seems like we're spending more time trying to train other people to do what you're doing in a specialty, as a coach. And we should probably just get to work and actually do patient care well.
Yeah.
And it's something maybe I've talked about it on the podcast. I don't know, but it's the idea of like coaches coaching coaches about coaching. And I hate that stuff.
Yeah. I feel like we're kind of stuck where you realize, and even I'm going to be completely transparent. Even I was like, oh, the shiny coin, because you establish yourself as an entrepreneur in the space, and all these opportunities come to you.
Yes.
And one of them is like people asking you how you got started. And so I have enough wherewithal now to direct them to our chief of staff, who will sit with them and just answer their questions. I don't ever want to screw somebody where they I'm not going to help them. But you can go down this road of, just saying, hey, pay me cash for my coaching. But then it directly kills what you're trying to do, which is, or I should say what I'm trying to do, which is take care of pediatric patients. And then I found that I was coaching pharmacists to be entrepreneurs, where my business wasn't where I wanted to be. And that was self-defeating. And so now I have enough wherewithal to be like, hey, here's our chief of staff. She can talk for me. She's absolutely amazing. If you want to know like what EHR we use, what PGX labs we use, all that stuff, she's more than qualified, and probably better at answering those questions than I am. And then that way I can focus on doing what I love. But it is easy to fall into that trap because you're like, oh, I could charge, a couple $1,000 for a course. And, and that's like a lot easier than seeing X amount of patients, or what we just talked about, fundraising for my company. I think we're at like pitch 45. So like it's kind of like the easy way out. And we need coaches, but I don't think we need the amount that we have. And I don't think we need the amount that are not even actively practicing, but are trying to teach people to practice in patient care, but they themselves are not. I think it's like someone has started a company, dabbled in a few private pay patients, and now that's like what they're making their business off of. Feels a little bit like the easy road, and none of us are actually doing the hard things, like trying to contract with payers, trying to advocate for our profession at a deeper, more wider way.
Yeah, I think it feels easy to people, but once they start it, they rarely stick with it.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I think it seems like it's just like a shiny penny that's distracting.
I had one person a few years ago message me and say, why haven't you made a course about how to be a career coach for pharmacists? And I was kinder, but my immediate reaction was like, why would I create a course to create my competition?
True.
Like, it doesn't make sense. What I've seen over the years with these kinds of courses or coaches is they get started, they maybe do it for a year or 2 or 3, and then they get back to something else. They come and go. The thing that has stuck around the most commonly is specifically like pharma coaching. And I think it's because it's meeting the demand, or the perceived demand of all pharmacists wanting to get out of, not all, many wanting to get out of patient care, perceiving
which is
that
sad.
Yeah, for other reasons, right? But a lot of them perceive that like work-life balance is better in pharma, which is not always true. And there is a part of me that would love to point out what we're doing. As a coach, I find it, I don't know. I think it's telling to have a course about how to do something if you have your business as well. It's like if you have a business within some sector of pharmacy, and then you want to start up a course on how to get started in it, like my immediate question is, why are you giving away the secret sauce? Is your business not doing well?
That's yes. And honestly, the part when it was like the hardest was when I was like financially it was hard. And I mean, you're an entrepreneur. It's so easy to turn your attention to something new that's going to distract you for a little bit.
This is hard. This feels easier. Yeah. And I've been there. I've been tempted by the idea of branding myself as a business coach in pharmacy. And I don't turn away opportunities, but I have full transparency to say things like, look, who knows what you can do with your business, but I'm not going to tell you that there's a perfect formula out there, or that you need to do all of the right things in order to grow what you have. We stick to careers mainly, but yeah, I really connected with your idea because you put it so well in that post that I was like, oh, a kindred spirit from someone I've never met.
That's LinkedIn does have the ability to do that. You see that like a post and you're like, oh my God, I want to be friends with them or connect with them. Like there's so much that we could talk about.
Yeah. Well, obviously you're very busy. You're building out new contracts. You are doing quite a bit of speaking. I've seen, and going around. What do you think life looks like from you 5 to 10 years from now with this business?
Oh boy. You know what? I hope, I feel like we're starting with medically complex children and contracting with payers where they attribute their most complex children to us. But I would love for this to escalate into a lot of, and it already has, like advocacy. For example, in Ohio, we have been able to work with the Ohio Board of Pharmacy to propose and mandate pediatric weights on scripts. I am hell-bent on working with every state to get that as a mandate. And that's not, there's no financial gain here, but we're using the Perfecting Peds brand and bringing awareness to pediatric medication errors and bringing awareness to the use of a pediatric pharmacist. And as part of that, I would like to use that awareness and the branding to really solve for big issues that it's mind-blowing in 2024 have not been solved for. So that's one of them, and we're making headway in other states as well. The second is just to, again, we're in the fee-for-service model right now in states that will allow us to be providers. And so my goal is to, just what I did in the long-term care, is show, okay, here's what happens when you have a virtual or in person, but we're virtual pharmacist touching base with a patient at least 7, sometimes 12 times a year. Here's what happens to these patients. Here's how their outcomes improve. So in 5 to 10 years, we'll have that research and publish, and we can then expand to more patients, more Medicaid, commercial, employer lines of business. And then hopefully we'll be able to take on, a little bit lower acuity patients that I shared with you that, with my own daughters, I'm constantly intervening on, this isn't the right frequency. This isn't the right med. This isn't the right drug. This isn't going to treat this infection. And so just really expanding through Perfecting Peds, the use of a pediatric pharmacist, the awareness that we're out there, and then also have a well-oiled machine as, hey, I'm a pediatric or an adult pharmacist and I want to practice in peds. We could take you, train you, and then, turn you into a pediatric trained pharmacist. And then last but not least, again, just raising awareness of like all the amazing things that pharmacists can do that sometimes we don't get a pat on the back for. And I think like even that scope creep was like a perfect example of that whole article by AMA, just to show that like we have a lot of work to do to show our worth. And so
they said we weren't providers.
We're the only people who have our doctorates that aren't providers in the world. And so with that, again, I just hope to use like the Perfecting Peds brand, the patient cases, the patient testimonials, the caregiver testimonials, the research. And again, in that same vein, we already have pharma companies interested in working with us. We take care of children with rare diseases. Are there opportunities for us to help through research so we can get more, we can optimize medication management in certain rare diseases. So I think there's opportunities are endless, which is gets me excited and gets me moving in the morning. And then ultimately, I would like for us to have a well-executed value-based care like we did in long-term care, where we are split on the cost savings and cost avoidance. I think as pharmacists, we kind of steer away from talking about getting paid, but we need to sustain this, and we need to build this, and we need to take care of our patients. It's like, I'm uncomfortable. I mean, I've gotten comfortable, but like, I will negotiate with people now. Like, that's not enough. That's not enough for me to pay my pharmacist. That's not enough for us to do the job that we need. And we have to get comfortable with those conversations. So I know that was a lot. I word vomited, but there's so many ideas, as you can tell, because you're a visionary too, that like, we have a lot of work to do.
Final question. What do you think that future version of you running that company wants to tell you now in this moment?
Enjoy the journey.
Mm. And it is a journey.
Sure is. But I think like you get so caught up in like, what's the problems of today?
Yeah.
Or what fire am I, trying to stoke out? And I think we forget like that, like how far you've come when you look back. And then two, just like how cool it is to be able to do this. And, just I used to, when I worked for the hospital, dread waking up. I would dread it. And now I like jump out of my bed, like ready for the day. And so I think, yes, there's a lot of things that need to happen, but like not stress myself out with like how it's going to happen, or does it have to be perfect? Yeah, if it's patient care, it does. But I think just enjoying the journey and being present is like where I constantly every day am saying, slow the hell down, Jena. Like where you're at now is where you're supposed to be, and enjoy what's going on around you.
My favorite thing about Jena is that she has this like really intense an intensity about her. And I don't say that from a negative standpoint. I think some people sometimes run across someone who's intense and they're like, "Oh, man, they're kind of scary." That's not at all what I mean. I mean, she is on fire for what she's doing and who she's about and who she's serving. And she's very serious. And I like that about her. I loved how she calls out this mindset shift she did about getting over perfectionism. I think that's really hard for a lot of pharmacists to do. We were trained for 20 plus years through our schooling to be perfect, to get A's, to do good. And then we're pharmacists and we have to do amazing. We have to be perfect for them. We have to give them everything right. Otherwise, they could be hurt. And that training and knowledge, gets into our DNA. It gets into the way we handle our kids or the way we handle our careers or looking for something new, wanting everything to be perfect. But the truth is that our careers it's kind of more like wayfinding. Like we have compasses, we know where north is, and if we go in a certain direction, knowing that we may make mistakes, that we may try other paths or try things and fail or not like them, is truly the way to move forward, because the alternative is staying stuck where you are. And it's where I feel like so many people are in their careers, feeling stuck, like they can't take that first step forward. There's this whole concept in positive psychology called learned helplessness, where they found through, unfortunately, experimenting on dogs that humans and animals can be conditioned to accept their circumstances. They can be conditioned to not try to fight or change their circumstances. And I feel like that is so true for many people, that we accept the circumstances that we have. And rather than try or get up or do something, even if it does mean that we'll fail, we just stay where we're at. The truth of the matter is that you can try. You can recondition yourself. You can move forward and fail in business, in careers, and in life. And it's okay. It's about what you do next that matters. My hope is that you can take that step today, even if it's doing something as simple as subscribing to our podcast. What better way for you to take a step forward than by investing in yourself and your career? Did you see how I made this self-serving? I hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode. Let me know what you took away from this episode in the comments on YouTube, or send us a message. Let us know what you think about this and maybe what it's inspiring you to do next. Feel free to reach out to us or have a conversation with one of our career advisors who are trained to help you see where you're at in your career and maybe inspire you or give you some action steps that you could do today to make progress towards a better career, a better job, maybe even a business. I don't know. There's no right prescription here. There's no perfect next step. There's only the messy middle of figuring out what's next. And we would love to help you do that. Thanks for watching this episode. And until I see you in the next one, take care.